The United States is currently undertaking a major project to fully encircle China in the South China Sea. The previously calm South China Sea is tense again as the United States appears determined to halt China's expansion. They've deployed an aircraft carrier strike group to display military power. Let's take a look at this now. The United States stated the South China Sea situation is becoming unstable. At the same time, the United States has started asking Southeast Asian countries to cooperate, saying they need to firmly stand up to China's actions. Hexus, former Secretary of Defense, took a firm stance on China's recent aggressive actions at the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Defense Ministers meeting in Kuala Lumpur. The United States publicly criticized China for recently declaring the Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea, a territory it took from the Philippines by force, a nature reserve. He stressed the need to strengthen joint surveillance and rapid response to deter provocations, and suggested a joint maritime domain awareness system to alert all member states if any country is threatened. To be honest, China really has no conscience. They built artificial islands in the South China Sea and are claiming the entire area as their own waters. It seems a bit outrageous. While Hexus, the Minister of War, toured Southeast Asia, he made several agreements. Let me explain in order. First, Minister of War Hexus established something called the Philippine Task Force with the Philippines. This Philippine Task Force has around 60 personnel led by a general officer. It's a United States military group focused on boosting cooperation, enhancing training, and improving readiness for humanitarian aid and disaster response between the two countries. This doesn't mean they're sending combat troops, but the United States military forming a group to directly support the Philippines against China in the South China Sea is notable. They've also chosen to cooperate with India. While India and the United States are still discussing, both agree on the need to counter China in the South China Sea. India and the United States signed a 10-year defense deal on October 31, but details remain undisclosed. Before the talks, Secretary of Defense Hexus said they aim for an open, free South China Sea and Indo-Pacific. Since he criticized China, it appears India and the United States agreed to cooperate in the South China Sea. In particular, the Philippines and Vietnam are responding quite actively to these demands from the United States. The Philippines and Vietnam, directly impacted by China's actions in the South China Sea, urgently need United States assistance. Vietnam and the Philippines are joining the United States in efforts to surround the South China Sea. Let's examine each. First, in the case of Vietnam, since China keeps insisting that the South China Sea is its own by building artificial islands, Vietnam has also started constructing artificial islands in the South China Sea. Vietnam has built 21 artificial islands in the South China Sea over the past 4 years. Some islands have runways, ammunition storage, and defense facilities. Due to this large construction, China built 7 artificial islands in the Spratly Islands. But Vietnam has already exceeded that by constructing 21 artificial islands here. This measure has responded to China more strongly than any other South China Sea country. China has 16 to 19 SQ Kilika, Vietnam 9 SQ kilometers, so more effort is needed. This is just the start, especially for the Philippines. The Philippines stressed it would have to get involved if Taiwan is invaded and highlighted the need to prepare countermeasures. During a May 2025 visit to a northern Luzon military unit, Philippine Military Chief of Staff Romeo Bronner Jr. said they need an action plan in case Taiwan is invaded. At the same time, we often see confrontations with the Chinese Coast Guard and Navy entering the South China Sea through various Coast Guard vessels and naval ships. They have increased military cooperation with Western countries like the United States and Japan. They have clearly defined their territorial claims over the South China Sea through legal provisions and are also deploying the latest United States military weapon systems one after another. They continue efforts to contain China through joint exercises with countries worldwide. The United States isn't just talking, they're taking action. The United States, Australia, New Zealand, and the Philippines showed efforts to keep China in check by conducting joint exercises at the end of October and the beginning of November. The United States deployed the Nimitz-class carrier strike group to the region, at one point facing a Chinese destroyer fleet. By regularly holding joint exercises and sending naval vessels to the South China Sea to counter China, we see how actively the United States is pursuing its encirclement strategy there. The United States has countered China's expansion by deploying the new Nemesis anti-ship missile on Philippine Islands near Taiwan. The United States is serious about this because the South China Sea is not just any sea. This is one of Earth's key maritime routes and the main artery of international trade. Every day, over 50,000 ships pass through these waters, and about 30% of the world's trade volume, worth around $3.5 trillion annually, passes through this sea. Crude oil, liquefied natural gas, semiconductors, grains, iron ore, and consumer goods all rely on this narrow sea to maintain the global supply chain linking Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas. Whoever controls the South China Sea controls global trade's lifeline. If one oil tanker is blocked, global oil prices will fluctuate, and if trade routes are closed for a month, the global supply chain could be paralyzed. The South China Sea holds vast natural resources beneath its seabed. The South China Sea is estimated to hold at least 11 billion barrels of oil and vast natural gas reserves. Some studies estimate this amount rivals certain Middle Eastern oil fields. The areas near the Paracel and Spratly Islands have the richest marine ecosystems and highest oil extraction potential. If fully developed, these resources could let China cut its reliance on foreign energy and threaten the United States maritime oil supply chain. This is exactly what the United States fears the most. The South China Sea is more than a trade route, it's key to future energy dominance. This is why the United States is creating a maritime surveillance network with allies, increasing freedom of navigation operations, and using drones and satellites to monitor the South China Sea in real time. If the United States loses control of these waters, it will lose its Asia-Pacific strategy, allowing China to complete its maritime Silk Road. If this happens, China will move further ahead of United States hegemony, and its growing navy is a major problem. China's third aircraft carrier, Fujian, has officially entered service, giving China 3 generations of carriers. Fujian is the first Chinese carrier with an electromagnetic catapult. China now has the second most aircraft carriers after the United States. China's possession of the Fujian has expanded its maritime operations. The prevailing analysis is that China has commissioned the Fujian with clear ambitions to challenge the United States' maritime supremacy. With the commissioning of the Fujian, China is showing moves to gain dominance not only in the Taiwan Strait, East China Sea, and South China Sea, but also in the Pacific Ocean. China plans to build at least 4 carrier strike groups by 2030, targeting a total of 6 aircraft carriers by 2035, making it the world's second largest carrier fleet after the United States. On top of that, China is producing an enormous number of warships. For example, they are launching as many as 10 nuclear submarines at the same time, and they are commissioning dozens of ships each year. By 2030, the United States is projected to have 304 warships and China 435. Some say it's fine since the United States has better technology, but we must admit the United States shipbuilding industry has collapsed. China's naval power is rapidly increasing, so we can't take this lightly. The United States knows this, so while its naval power is still stronger, it's trying to keep China in check through the South China Sea. In the future, the United States will not back down from the South China Sea. They'll actually be even more meticulous and aggressive than now. The United States is planning a comprehensive maritime encirclement to monitor and control the South China Sea. Up until now, it was just the groundwork, but from now on, we have to see it as entering the full-scale deployment phase. The United States will fully reorganize its alliance network. They'll not only work with the Philippines and Vietnam, but also aim to involve neutral countries such as Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore. They claim to support a free, open Indo-Pacific, but actually aim to encircle China and stop its unilateral actions in the South China Sea. The United States military can use India to pressure China's maritime routes from both the Indian Ocean and South China Sea. The United States will also boost its permanent military presence. The United States is expanding military facilities in northern Luzon and Palawan, Philippines, likely deploying advanced assets like radars, unmanned surveillance, and hypersonic missile bases. A Chinese vessel moving in the South China Sea is instantly tracked by satellites, drones, and submarines. The United States will likely use economic and diplomatic pressure too. The United States will likely label China's militarization of artificial islands in the South China Sea as illegal, push for international sanctions, and step up efforts to block China's resource access by intervening in regional maritime agreements. American energy firms are partnering with the Philippines and Vietnam for gas exploration in the South China Sea as part of an economic strategy to weaken China's influence. Militarily, freedom of navigation operations will become much more intense than now. Right now, when someone approaches within 12 nautical miles of China's artificial islands, they just send out warning broadcasts, but in the future, it's highly likely that United States warships will intentionally cross those boundaries to test China's response. It's a kind of psychological warfare and a show of presence. If China responds, they will immediately release videos and satellite photos to wage a battle for international public opinion. They're seeking to isolate China via global opinion, and the United States doesn't see this encirclement of the South China Sea as a short-term operation. They view it as a long-term strategy that will last at least 10 years, and the machinery could continue for more than 20 years. The Indo-Pacific Command oversees the United States military's operations from India to Hawaii. The United States aims to unify all military, diplomatic, and intelligence networks in the region with an integrated command system. The United States will never relinquish control of the seas. No matter how many warships China builds or how many aircraft carriers it makes, the United States plans to create an alliance of seas to isolate China. The current South China Sea Encirclement project is a move in the game that will determine the hegemonic gesture of the 21st century. The United States doesn't plan to settle for second place. Everyone, what do you think about the maritime encirclement of the South China Sea that the United States is currently carrying out? Please let us know in the comments. That's all for this video. Thank you.